Wow.
Yeah,
Just straight up.
yeah. One like got drunk right there, especially.
We didn't find any sparkling vampires, but we did find a lot of big trees and muddy trail. The Bogachiel River is like the Hoh River's forgotten sibling. Actually, it's kind of hard to call them siblings. The Bogachiel is a rain-fed river whose original name to the indigenous people here meant turns muddy when it rains. Since it doesn't originate in the alpine environments higher up in the Olympics, it doesn't have that deep glacial blue color of some of the most famous rivers that dump out of the west side of the Olympic Peninsula near Forks, Washington. The trailhead is open again after a big washout took out the road for a while. If you use Google Maps, it'll take you to Undie Road. Once on Undie Road, which becomes Bogachiel Road, apparently, you'll eventually come across a brown sign pointing to the Bogachiel trailhead. Follow the sign, not Google Maps, as most navigation programs are under the impression that Bogachiel Road continues next to the river. It does not. It has been rerouted up the hillside, so follow the signs, not Google Maps. After a couple miles of gravel road, you'll come across the trailhead. There is a pit toilet and a decent amount of parking here, but it should be noted that this is not yet national park land you're parking on. This is national forest land. So I would suggest a Northwest Forest Pass just to be safe. Don't park in the stockyard. That's for horses. From the parking lot, the trail descends down a few switchbacks to meet up with the river bottom land. Apparently, there's an old homestead down in here as well, as there is a homestead loop. God knows what was going through the minds of those intrepid yet ill-advised settlers. Beyond inspiration, there is little of economic value down here if one doesn't have access to a chainsaw and a skidder. So you don't have to go very far into this river valley before you start seeing some pretty darn big trees. The strange thing about this, though, for you arborphilic people out there, is that an awful lot of the biggest trees within this first couple of miles right outside the park are Sitka spruce, which is relatively uncommon this far inland, making this a unique experience. Seriously, you keep hiking farther and farther inland, and there just keep being these Sitka spruce trees, all persistently standing there, defiantly existing with the ocean nowhere in sight. There are also stands of huge cedar trees in the bogs, hemlocks, and Douglas firs up on the hillside. These are big trees, some of the biggest in the world, and unlike their bigger cousins down in California, you can see them from a rugged trail, which is arguably better than the side of the road experience of the more developed redwoods. The trail is generally flat and the tread in good shape for the first 2 miles until the trail arrives at the entrance to the national park. The tread is gravel over mineral dirt, and there are few, if any, significant obstacles or climbs, and there is a significant payoff for the effort within this first 2 miles. Given how short the drive is from Forks, this first 2 miles of trail would be a perfect addendum to a longer day, perhaps one that also includes the first few miles of the Hoh River Trail or something else related to that. After the park boundary, the trail gets really muddy, like slick and slimy mud that you'll fall down in if you're not careful. The day we hiked it, there was evidence of a lot of fresh trail work happening in here, with numerous reroutes with brand new tread that added to the muddiness as well as some confusion. My heart goes out to the trail builders here, as coming up with a dry tread anywhere in here is going to be nearly an impossible task. That being said, the new trail work will firm up by the end of the summer, and by then the trail should be in great shape. There is one washout on the first 5 miles of this trail with a rope ascent to get around it. Just keep that in mind if you were thinking of attempting to ride your horse on the trail this year. You can't. Not until a more permanent solution is found for this reroute. For those of you lamenting that mountain bikes are not allowed on this trail inside the national park, I assure you that you are missing very little of consequence. This really is a browse around hiking kind of trail. The trail itself is nothing worth seeking out, but the forest around it is. This is a forest best enjoyed at a walking pace. About 4.3 miles in, the trail crosses a bog where there is about 2 feet of water hanging out right on the tread. The best way around this bog is to bushwhack toward the river until you find the end of the bog and walk around it and back to the trail. Do not attempt the deer trail traveling away from the river, as that just leads to more bog. I'm assuming that this bog dries out in the summer, but then I don't know why you would waste your time visiting a temperate rainforest during the summer dry season. Hopefully, trail maintainers will have a chance to build a bridge over this to minimize the damage of hiker feet through the underbrush. Also, this bog is a pretty okay turnaround point as well if you're just out for a sub 10 mile day hike. There's not too much of interest within the first mile beyond this point. Now, most of you are likely visiting the Olympic Peninsula at the wrong time of year, and here's why. The reason you visit a rainforest is the forest itself, not the beautiful vistas it offers, because there are no beautiful and open vistas, just a bunch of big, beautiful trees. You're here for botanical reasons, not glory, and most of the plant life in a temperate rainforest is most interesting when there's moisture in the air and it's temperate, which makes spring break the best time to come visit. Yet when we came to visit on our spring break, we didn't encounter a single soul in here, and the hotel rooms and Forks were discounted. You dum-dums are missing out if you're coming to the temperate rainforest in the summer, because April is when all the flowers are starting to bloom and the moss is fat and the woods are alive with birdsong, and it's not too hot to enjoy yourself, because that's another important thing that you might not have considered about this forest. Summers are dry in the Pacific Northwest everywhere except for here. This is the only place in the Pacific Northwest where summers are hot and humid. Seriously, it feels like Williamsburg, Virginia in here on a summer day. It's muggy because it's a rainforest, and if it's wildfire season, then it's muggy and smoky. It becomes a muggy, smoky, and crowded hellhole with beautiful trees. So you should come here in the off season when it's nice and cool. The flowers might be blooming, the birds will be singing, and the hotels are affordable. Overall, this trail is well built and maintained. The forest is beautiful, full of enormous, epic trees and plant life of prehistoric proportion and variety. It beckons you in and tugs you along, always wanting to see what's around the next bend. There's a half-decent campsite about 5 miles in, but the river canyon is pretty narrow, and there aren't a lot of places within the first 5 miles that would be able to handle large numbers of overnight visitors. So if you don't need to backpack in here, I would suggest against it unless you're planning a multi-day trip farther up into the canyon or as part of a bigger loop. The nicest thing you can do for the woods is not to spend the night there. Leave no trace and pack out your toilet paper. For the more casual adventurer, the best plan is really just to hike the first couple of miles up to the park boundary, since that's where the biggest payoff in epic forest trees is located, and aside from the first few switchbacks, the trail is completely flat. Also, make sure that you and whoever you're with just take a moment to stop talking and really appreciate the silence. This place is pretty darn quiet.